You might not think of librarians as daring, secret plan makers, but in December of 1941, one particular librarian recognized the need to protect some of the most important documents in history, and so he did what needed to be done. This brave man wasn't just a librarian, he was also a poet. Okay, so poets are also not typically what you think of when you think of somebody bravely protecting national treasures, but maybe this guy proves that we should give poets a little more credit when it comes to extreme measures. This guy, this sneaky savior of scripts and scrolls, was Archibald MacLeish, and in 1939 he was asked by President Franklin D. Roosevelt to be the Librarian of Congress. It was a controversial hire, as he was primarily a writer, poet, and teacher, but he was also a World War I veteran, and he had a major ally in the Senate Majority Leader, Kentuckian Alben Barkley, who led the confirmation hearings. What could have been an inconsequential job, historically speaking, actually became crucially important to the historical documents of our nation. It was a duty MacLeish accepted with great honor and seriousness.
Roosevelt wanted him for the job because he knew MacLeish understood the importance of what could happen as World War II became a reality for America. And sure enough, in just a few short years, he found himself working feverishly to secretly move some of the most important documents in history from Washington, D.C. to a safer location. The day after Christmas of 1941, with the help of the Secret Service and armed guards, a crew loaded some cases onto a departing train amidst the hustle and bustle of the Washington, D.C. train station. At first, the agent in charge, a man named Harry Neal, only knew that the cases were of national importance, but he didn't know what was inside. His curiosity got the best of him, so he asked Archibald. Agent Neal soon understood that his cargo was, quote, utterly irreplaceable. Among the 4 boxes was the original copy of Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural address, a powerful speech given by the Kentuckian just 41 days before his assassination. Likewise, his Gettysburg Address was also deemed invaluable and included in the shipment. But Archibald had more to say about a few other documents that were also being snuck to secret safety.
The Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States are the principal possessions of the people of this country. In them, if anywhere, the American idea has its visible expressions and its tangible form. The idea which made the American nation a nation is written down in its first and in its final words in Jefferson's manuscript of the Declaration of Independence. It is engrossed and published to the world in the signed official copy of that document. It is translated into the form of machinery of government in the vellum leaves of the Constitution of the United States.
That's right. The Declaration of Independence and the American Constitution were part of this secret mission. But there was more. Magna Carta, the most important document in British history, perhaps the most important document in the history of democracy in general, was also now in the care of Neal and his team. Of this document in particular, Archibald MacLeish wrote,
Magna Carta is the first charter of freedom, the progenitor and antecedent, in one great line of the American documents of liberty which stand beside it.
He's right. The story goes all the way back to the medieval period. The year 1215 was a big one for England. King John had built up massive debts from the wars he waged, and lost. King Philip II of France took a bunch of his lands and left poor John looking into his empty money bags. King John, in turn, figured he'd make up for flagging funds by raising the taxes on his landholding barons, who sat beneath him in the hierarchy of the feudal society. Those guys were not having it. They didn't like his ways, especially that he behaved however he saw fit, unbound by any rules. So they stormed his castle and held him hostage until he was willing to negotiate. The result was a document and agreement between King John and the barons called Magna Carta, or the Great Charter. It said a lot of things in its Latin text, and in there somewhere, King John agreed that a ruler and government must abide by laws, just like everyone else. Also in there was a bit about how a person accused of a crime would be judged by a jury of their own peers. This agreement to hold King John accountable, Magna Carta, became the foundation of huge parts of society and government. It is the first thing British law students study. It was also fundamentally important to the founders of America in creating the Constitution. And the bit about a trial by a jury of peers should sound familiar to just about anyone. Many historians would argue that it is the most important legal document in history, because it blazed the trail and laid the groundwork for nearly everything that came afterwards. After agreed upon and signed way back in 1215, a few copies of Magna Carta were made to spread the word. All were handwritten, because, well, that was the only way in the 13th century, long before Gutenberg's printing press came along. Only 4 original copies survive today, and for centuries, the quartet of Magna Cartas were safely nestled in England. But in 1939, on the eve of World War II, New York City was hosting a huge World's Fair. And despite the theme being the world of tomorrow, England thought that they would demonstrate their commitment to friendship with America and highlight the two nations' common roots by sending something not from tomorrow, but from yesterday, or the yesterday of 724 years ago, rather.
Once upon a time, the home of the 1939 World's Fair was the largest ash dump you could imagine. Generations of New Yorkers and the businesses heated many of their buildings with coal and wood. That makes a lot of ash. But also, many of these people grew tired of feeding their trash to bands of wild pigs, so it became common to burn trash in incinerators. This also left tons of ash. What did they do with all of the leftovers? They made an ash dump in Queens. Garbage ash as far as the eye can see. It was a mess. But when it was decided to create a huge, epic World's Fair to end all World's Fairs, the people in charge made the New York government an offer they couldn't refuse.
Give us the land, we'll clear it for the World's Fair, and when it's over, we'll give you a beautiful park.
The incredible 1939 New York World's Fair was a celebration with pavilions and buildings dedicated to 63 countries around the world, each highlighting their cultures, their achievements, and their visions for the future. In addition to the international opportunities, crowds came to see robots, see-through cars, and even a revolutionary new invention, the television. And of course, at the British Pavilion, people could cast their eyes on something that had never left England before, Magna Carta. Probably not as exciting as the TV to the general public, but historical documents are still thrilling for some. And it should go without saying that it was a huge risk to send the priceless, irreplaceable document across the ocean to a former ash dump during a time of international conflict. But to be clear, I'm going to say it anyway. It was a huge risk to send the priceless, irreplaceable document across the ocean during a time of international conflict. You see, meanwhile, the Nazi Party had been on the rise in Germany and would soon invade France. After that, they'd cast their treacherous eyes upon England with plans to do the same. Nothing was safe, especially Magna Carta, if England were to put it at greater risk and have America send it back across the ocean, free to be plucked for eternity. So England thought about it and realized it was a bad idea to bring it home with World War II going on, and asked America if they wouldn't mind babysitting the priceless document. Figuring that babysitting a piece of paper wouldn't be too terribly hard, America agreed. They had just the babysitter to keep it safe, Archibald MacLeish. He'd gladly keep the Magna Carta at the Library of Congress next to America's own priceless and irreplaceable founding documents. They'd be safe in Washington, D.C., everyone thought. But everything changed on December 7th, 1941. That was the day Japanese bombers surprised the U.S. military base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Most Americans never really considered that the war could come to them, but Pearl Harbor was a shocking wake-up call. Within days, the American government made plans for what to do in case of an enemy attack on the American mainland. Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, is very close to the Atlantic Ocean, and if bombers made it over the sea, it would certainly be a target. Since it is home to the government, the National Archives, the Library of Congress, and the millions of important objects in the collection at the Smithsonian Museum, people realized a tragic event could destroy many of the most important things in American history.
It seemed unlikely that Germany could get to the capital, but just in case, Archibald MacLeish made a plan. A few weeks after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the most precious pieces of American history were chosen, safely packed up, secretly taken to the train station, and bound for the most secure place America had to offer. And along for the ride was Magna Carta. The destination? A new facility built for the Treasury Department, originally intended to secure the federal gold and bullion holdings, and named after a Revolutionary War hero and former bookseller, which, come to think of it, might be why librarian and poet Archibald MacLeish chose the spot in the first place. No, not really. Kentucky's new facility, the Bullion Depository at Fort Knox, was the ideal choice because it was far from the Atlantic Ocean and deep in the middle of the country. And more importantly, it was a fortress of concrete, steel, and iron, with walls thicker than a full-grown elephant, and reinforced to withstand unimaginable blasts. Archibald knew the most precious papers in America could never be touched there. So at the end of 1941, the documents traveled 600 miles, passed through Louisville, and then found their safe house at Fort Knox. Kentucky kept these invaluable and utterly irreplaceable documents safe, while most of the world had no idea they were even there. The time here was largely uneventful. Worth noting, however, is the visit by Harvard's Dr. George Stout. With the Declaration not on display, it seemed to be a great time to provide some much-needed conservation work. Stout came to Fort Knox with his assistant, Evelyn Ehrlich, and the pair spent 30 hours painstakingly working on the historic document. Old glue and tape from previous mounts had to be removed, cracks in the parchment had to be patched, and the document had to be cleaned and reflattened from years of being rolled and unrolled and poorly mounted. Their effort at Fort Knox was some of the most important work done to the document and guaranteeing it would survive to today and beyond.
Dr. Stout would go on to lead the famous Monuments Men team, who cataloged and preserved and sought to return the thousands of artworks stolen by Nazis throughout World War II. Perhaps it's fitting, then, that Kentuckian George Clooney would portray a fictionalized version of him in the 2014 film Monuments Men. For much of the remainder of the war, Kentucky's Fort Knox was home to quite a collection of ink and parchment, perhaps the most valuable in the world. But in 1944, when it was believed the threat to American shores were no longer as great as they once were, the Magna Carta was returned to the Library of Congress, where it went on display once again for Americans. In 1946, with the war over and the ocean once again safe for crossing, the Magna Carta was finally returned to England. That very same copy did return once more to America in the 2000s for a visit to Boston and a triumphant celebration at its one-time temporary home in Washington, D.C. Luckily for England, the only Magna Carta threats since World War II have been more weather-related. In recent years, it had to be taken off view from its home in the Lincoln Cathedral because of a leaky roof. Water can be as bad for 800-year-old documents as bombs are. But currently, things are dry and it is available for visitors to see. And we could all have librarian and poet Archibald MacLeish and the safe walls of Fort Knox to thank for that.